Every year, studios announce new MMOs, flashy trailers filled with crazy graphics, incredible gameplay. You get excited, then you spend the next decade waiting for them to release, only to end up ultimately disappointed, either due to them being largely irrelevant at this point or due to cancellations, which leaves us looking for MMOs to play now. And while there are no MMOs that are larger than World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV on PC, neither of those games are free. With the price of living increasing across the globe, it's becoming more difficult to warrant active subscriptions or purchases of MMOs. Thus, we look to the free-to-play market, which admittedly might feel a little bit like the dollar store of the MMO scene, but there are some standout titles that are very much worth your time. Action, tab target, hybrid, anime, 3D, Asian, open world, segregated, hub-based. This list has them all, the ultimate list of free-to-play MMORPGs that you can jump into right now in 2023. So sit back, relax, and let's see if I can't find you something to waste some time in. Star Wars: The Old Republic is a tab target sci-fi MMORPG developed by BioWare, released in 2011. The Old Republic is set in the larger Star Wars universe and features a number of planets and characters you might recognize from other Star Wars properties. The Old Republic definitely looks and feels a little bit dated in terms of mechanics and functionality, but its immense open world, its deep narrative, allowing you to shape your own story, romanceable NPCs, and voice acting allow for the game to truly stand out amongst its competitors. Mabinogi is a point-and-click anime MMORPG developed by DevCat Studio and published by Nexon in 2004. Mabinogi is a social MMORPG, the only one of its kind, allowing players to work a full-time job, hunt, gather, craft or sell, giving you seemingly endless freedom to realistically do whatever you want and obtain XP from doing so. There is functional combat, and it feels overly complicated at times, I'll admit, but you will not find an MMO like this anywhere else. Lost Ark is an action fantasy MMORPG developed by Tripod Studio and Smilegate, also published by Smilegate in 2019. Lost Ark is a top-down isometric MMO, admittedly the only one of its kind in this entire list, and one of the few remaining isometric MMOs left alive. Players navigate a large segregated world via mouse click, with abilities bound to letter keys, typically the exact opposite of action gameplay functionality. The game is absolutely gorgeous and has more content to consume than your average MMO, and is regularly updated, which for the free MMO genre is kinda saying something. PSO2 New Genesis is a sci-fi anime MMORPG developed and published by Sega in 2021. Its predecessor, PSO2, developed and published by the very same studio, was released back in 2020 globally. PSO2 is a hub MMO where players remain on a space station and deploy with a group of other players to various planets, engaging enemies and pursuing the story. New Genesis is a segregated open world MMO where players run around a large open world, seeing numerous times larger groups of players, participating in open world group content, and engaging massive zone bosses, much like in traditional MMOs. Both are fantastic versions of PSO2, completely varied in terms of overall gameplay, and are at the same time completely interconnected, allowing you to freely transition between worlds. Before we cover the remainder of the MMOs in this list, though, I want to take a moment here to thank our incredible patrons over on Patreon. You guys allow for me to continue to cover MMOs like this for a living, and I cannot thank you all enough for that. Also, if you have a moment, consider following me over on Twitch, where I stream MMOs like this every single weekend. I would love to have you join me there. RuneScape is an old school fantasy MMORPG developed and published by Jagex in 2001, and as of 2023 has two popular variants, Old School RuneScape and RuneScape 3, which are the same game but have significant differences that set themselves apart, fracturing the community between fans of each respective version. RuneScape features a target cycling system that is a little bit different to traditional tab target, but is also more or less a variant of it. It has an astonishingly enormous world to explore, as a large emphasis on crafting and life skills, and allows for you to tackle progression in a variety of different ways. While not a social crafting MMO, it's also very far from being your basic monster murdering MMO as well. MapleStory is a 2D anime side-scrolling MMORPG developed by Wizit and published by Nexon, arguably being the driving force behind Nexon's overall success around the world, spawning many spin-offs, which have all more or less failed. Unlike almost every other MMO available on the market, MapleStory features a 2D side-scrolling form of gameplay, meaning that you can move horizontally, you can move vertically, but you're on a flat surface, a flat background. It has some surprisingly stunning, overwhelming at times action combat with more skill and effect clutter than any other anime MMO released to date, more unique areas, biomes than any other MMO I've ever played, and a narrative that really doesn't take itself seriously at all, which makes for a very fun, entertaining experience. DC Universe Online is the only superhero MMO in this list, because, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you here, there really are only 2 superhero MMOs that are currently available on the entire market, and I honestly feel like DC Universe Online is the higher quality one. I don't mean to offend everyone that plays Champions Online, all 7 of you. DC Universe Online was developed by Daybreak Game Company and Dimensional Link Games and published by Warner Brothers in 2011. DC Universe Online allows for you to craft your hero or your villain by selecting several different ability combinations, super speed, flight, super strength, amongst many others, and engage in fast, impactful action combat. It features the option of joining either the heroes, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, or the villains, the Joker, Lex Luthor, and whoever Wonder Woman's nemesis is, like Cheetah, her parental issue, I don't know, and allows for you to explore large cities with almost no limitations imposed. VINDIGTUS, called Mabinogi Heroes in Korea, is an action hub MMO developed by DevCat and published by Nexon in 2010, and despite releasing in 2010, continues to have some of the greatest action combat in the entire genre. VINDIGTUS is a hub MMO, meaning when not engaged with enemies, you're occupying a small instanced area, one of several, where you can chat and hang out with other players. You deploy either alone or with friends and tackle a plethora of different varied dungeons. The combat allows for direct environmental interaction, meaning you can pick up pillars, rocks, rails, even enemies at times, and use them as weapons, projectiles. Like, you can pick up a giant spider, you can smack a minotaur with it, and then fling it around like a yo-yo. It's honestly kind of cool. EverQuest is a fantasy MMORPG developed by Warrant Interactive and 989 Studios and published by Sony Online Entertainment in 1999, the oldest MMO in this list, and you can tell that simply by looking at it. EverQuest utilizes a type of tab target combat, although I believe there still exists this issue where when cycling through enemies with the tab button, it cycles through any and all interactables near you, including hostile enemies, harvest nodes, NPCs, etc. Nevertheless, the game features a large open world to explore, a rich narrative with a lot of lore, and I mean, if you're a fan of old school MMOs over the newer, more empty feeling games that we get these days, this might just be the game for you. Dungeon Fighter Online is a side-scrolling hub MMO developed and published by Meeple in 2005. Dungeon Fighter Online is one of China's largest MMORPGs, totaling tens of millions of active players every month, tactically making it the most popular MMO in the entire world. Much like MapleStory, Dungeon Fighter Online features a horizontal type of progression, but it doesn't feature a 2D perspective, meaning that it isn't flat and you can actually move in and out. It's kind of difficult to explain unless you either see the differences or you play them. The game world is entirely hub-based, meaning that you move between hubs, deploy either alone or with friends on missions, and slash your way to the next area in some of the best action combat an anime MMO has to offer. Truly a rare MMO that you need to try out at least once. Tower Fantasy is an anime MMORPG developed by Hada and published by Level Infinite globally in 2022. I know this isn't what you'd expect me to mention because some people believe that I have this weird hatred for the game. On the contrary, I think Tower of Fantasy is a very fun, very good-looking game. I have a direct issue with the mismanagement from the studio, completely unrelated to the game at its core, and I continue to tell people to this day that this is the best cross-platform MMO available, urging them to try it out. Tower of Fantasy features an enormous open world that continues to expand with every major patch, 2.0 with Vera, 3.0 with Domain 9. It has some gorgeous environments, great quality action combat. My only issue is its gacha, which is noticeable if you're a free-to-play player, as this is an MMO at its core, and the discrepancy in power is very evident if you're playing with someone that has thousands of dollars to spend on it. Guild Wars 2 is a hybrid MMORPG developed by ArenaNet and published by NCSoft in 2012. And while some of you might argue that this is not entirely free to play, as expansions do have a box price excluding it from this list, the entire base game is free, and that's hundreds of hours worth of content. The base game alone is better than the vast majority of other MMOs, and the expansions only get better from there. Guild Wars 2 doesn't have a full action combat system like BDO or a full tap target combat system like WoW. Rather, it has a hybrid amalgamation of both, making it much more unique than its competition. It has a gargantuan-sized open world, albeit features segregated zones, with so many things to explore and locate that you'll often find yourself engaging in exploration more than anything else, including its compelling, incredibly well voice-acted narrative. And finally, Blue Protocol, an anime MMORPG developed and published by Bandai Namco currently in Japan in 2023, and published by Amazon Game Studios globally next year in 2024. I'm aware you can only play this game in Japan right now, but feel the need to include this because it is by far one of the most fun MMOs that I have played in years. With its stunning anime aesthetic, to its large segregated world, its slower but meaningful action combat, powerful enemies, and focus on gathering and exploration, there is not a single anime MMO that can live up to what Blue Protocol has and will achieve over the next year or two. And that is it. That is 13 free-to-play MMORPGs, arguably some of the best in every category, and by far the best the free genre has to offer. There are some games I chose to omit, like Neverwinter, Secret World Legends, or Blade and Soul, but that's just because there are other MMOs that I included here in this list that do what they do, but better. With this in mind, I would genuinely love to know what MMO you're playing, what you most enjoy if you have the time. Otherwise, take a moment to check out these two videos on screen. You shouldn't be disappointed.